I'm Jemima, and I'm half Nigerian, half Filipino, and I was brought up in Hong Kong for my entire life. Now I currently work as a freelance English and drama teacher. I also do some modeling and photography on the side. So I hope that through my work, especially in the creative industry, I hope to show, try to promote, more racial diversity. So it was a slow start because I think I initially saw myself as an academic, and I only saw modeling and photography as something as hobbies. And if I was lucky, then I would get paid for it. But otherwise, I didn't really see myself, earning a living from the creative industry. So people take what they see from media and they applied it to me, and they expect me to live up to that stereotype. When it comes to athletics, I felt the need to perform very, very, very well because I was usually the only black person in the entire competition. So if I didn't do well, then it would look very bad. When I started attending middle school, I had these boys who would come up to me and talk to me in, street style, like, yo, what's up? And I wasn't really into hip hop back then. And I didn't get it. I was like, why? And I think there are times where I felt a bit isolated because in Hong Kong, you do have a lot of, there are people from different parts of the world, but there are groups, there are cliques. So growing up, my peers were of South Asian or Southeast Asian descent. And as a black person, I didn't necessarily belong to that group. We were civil, we had fun, but I didn't really identify as part of that community because being in Africa was already very different from being South Asian or Southeast Asian. Even though we experienced the same kind of discrimination from locals, but still my identity as a black person, I think made me feel different or stand out from my peers who were of South Asian or Southeast Asian descent. When I had finished my master's degree and I started working and I had some free time, and I'm like, I kind of want to do something more creative. I felt this desire in me to have this creative outlet. So that's when I started taking acting classes. So every Monday evening from 7 to 10 p.m., that was my dedicated time to taking acting lessons. And I did it for, I think, about 2 years or so. So that was my first big step. But I think the breakthrough came when I was hired by a company to perform at the Peninsula Hotel as my character Diana Ross, singing for 2.5 months, at least 2-3 times a week, at the hotel, at the Felix, at the very top. And I think that was the biggest gig I ever had in my life, to sing, dance, and act all in one show. And I can definitely say, my body was not used to that intensity of work. So I think it took me 2 months to recover from that. And it was great. I still look back and I'm very grateful for the experience. Bless my director who took a chance in me and hired me to be that character and have fun. Yeah, I was teaching in the daytime. Yes. I was working in the morning and having to rush to work after my last class. So it was exhausting, I remember. But it was fun. All I can think of is fun and tiring. That's it. I think it's just the fact that it's creative and that it's all about self-expression. It's an art. In academia, it's literally all about being organized, research, which is it's great. It's interesting. For me, that's why I like being a teacher, because you get to learn something new. Teaching is not one way. You learn from your students, you learn from the system, you learn from your environment. And that's why I think teaching is one of the best jobs I could have, because it's a two-way thing. It's not just me giving knowledge, it's me also learning, learning how to be a better teacher, learning how to be, learning how to be better at educating my students. I think we're all naturally creative people. But people have different ways of expressing that desire to be creative, right? For some people, it can just be simply watching a movie or watching, a performance. Some people, they rather be involved in the performance itself. So for me, I like being involved I'm not into being behind the scenes and or watching it or being a spectator. I want to be part of the performance. So I think what I like about creative is, being a creative industry is just to have this platform to, express myself, to use my looks, my ideas, everything about me to express myself and get paid for it. People only ever saw me as a Black or African kid. And so I think that kind of reinforced people's perception of me. And that somehow molded the way I saw myself. Like, oh, even though even though I live in an Asian city and I was born in the Philippines, people only will ever see a Black girl. If I really had to identify the parenting style that was prominent or that really molded me, I'll definitely say it was the African way. And also growing up, I carried a Nigerian passport for my entire life. So when people ask, what is your nationality? I will never say Hong Kong. I had no reason to say Hong Kong because my passport back then was the Nigerian passport. So in a way, all of these put together just made me, think that I'm Nigerian because in a way I was brought up like a Nigerian. I was brought up by a Nigerian dad and I had a Nigerian passport. And so when we were getting the Hong Kong passport, I felt that was when I was actually the most confused about my identity because I was actually worried. I'm like, so if I give up my Nigerian passport, I have to now tell people I'm a Hong Konger? And for me, I legit struggled with this. Even though maybe my dad wouldn't get why, but for me, it's because I spent a long time, as a kid, and this is, my identity was Nigerian, right? And now suddenly I have to call myself a Hong Kong, and I'm like, well, first of all, I don't speak Chinese, and I definitely don't feel Chinese, So it was a very interesting, process of forming my identity. But even now, especially coming back to Hong Kong for my trips, and people ask me where I'm from, the number one thing I keep the answer of Nigerian. I keep it simple because if I say, oh, I'm actually Nigerian, I'm half Nigerian, half Filipino, brought up in Hong Kong, but I was born in the Philippines. And I'm not interested in repeating that story for the 10 billionth time. So when I tell people I'm Nigerian, when people ask me where I'm from, I just say I'm Nigerian. End the story. Can we move on to something else? Yeah. I mean, there are probably some overlaps with the Asian way of with the Asian upbringing because, first of all, my dad, there were times when he was like, "Oh, don't you want to be a doctor?" Or, are you going to work in finance? Work in the bank, do jobs that bring home money, right? So that's why growing up, nobody wanted to support me taking dance class. That was unthinkable. I could never really ask for them to pay for my dance classes. If I wanted to do something that was not related to my academics, I had to convince my dad, like, oh, I want to join a rugby team because it might help me look good for my university applications. I had to do a lot of convincing because for my dad, especially as a West African, it's like, okay, how's this going to help with your university application? Why should I spend my hard-earned money for this? Is it going to benefit you? No. So don't ask me. Right. So, so I think it's just one of those instances where I appreciate how African parents, I mean, this can be most parents, but particularly African parents, even though I had the desire to want to do creative stuff, I had to follow my dad's, aspirations of doing well in life, which worked out in the end. I'm glad that, we were pushed to get educated, to work hard. I mean, to, do well, study well. But in the end, I'm now freelancing as a teacher and a model and photographer. I think, deep down, I always had this desire to just go and be in different places and just to meet new people. And so when the borders open, and so when I attended my first dance festival, I think that was the spark. Because I think I'm trying to remember clearly, but as I was returning to Hong Kong, I was already booking my next trip for the next dance festival. I can actually go and meet new people in these spaces and just, and constantly keep learning, keep meeting, and keep thriving in these communities that I didn't know existed. So I think that's that's what, I think that's why I enjoy traveling. Not actually, what? I don't really enjoy traveling. I enjoy attending the dance festivals. Um, I just need to travel to get there. I mean, I would just love to also make a living from doing the things I love to do rather than just teach. I do enjoy teaching, but I love to do more than I would love to earn a living from just, other than teaching itself. Um, and I don't know. I think for me, my dream is just to inspire people to live life and to enjoy it, because in a city like Hong Kong, people are so happily married to their work. And for someone like me, it's kind of a downer where every now and then I want to meet up with my friends or I want to do something with people, but because of people drowning in their work, it can be very difficult, and I end up feeling a bit, if I had to use the word, lonely sometimes, because sometimes I'm like, okay, well, who am I going to meet this weekend? Who's not, who's not suffering from, from their heavy workload, right? And it's a lot of effort just to, I don't know, to just do fun things with people regularly. Because I think here in Hong Kong, because people are so tired, people meet up once a month to do stuff, which is great. But for me, I feel like for me, I feel like I'm able to do it constantly and regularly, because it's good for your psyche, it's good for your emotional state, your mental well-being, etc. So, so my dream is very, how do I put it? Maybe, I don't know if deep is the right word, but it's very like, yes, I would like to, um, do, I don't know, travel professionally, I guess, dance professionally, act professionally, do anything creatively, professionally, and also inspire people through it.